out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investex Specialist Bank.
We were at the World Economic Forum, and with me is Frans van Houten, who is the CEO of Philips. We spoke just briefly before the break about your presence in Africa. You started in 1929, I think, with a factory in Commissioner Street in Johannesburg, which is long since gone. But the fact is, you're at the World Economic Forum on Africa, so Africa must be very important to you.
Africa is very important to us. We see huge growth opportunities given the more vibrant economy and the large population, and what we see many unmet needs in healthcare, in lighting, in consumer well-being. I think it's very important that as the leadership of a company that we are in the local markets and also have the opportunity to engage with opinion leaders, NGOs and other entrepreneurs. Only then do you get a realistic view of the opportunities as well as the challenges to overcome. So that won't happen if I'm in the headquarters in Amsterdam.
How bad is it in Europe at the moment? I was recently in Spain, and I must say that the mood wasn't particularly optimistic. I know that the Netherlands, Holland is something completely different, but generally, business-wise, has it been a depressing time for you?
Europe for us has been more or less flat, and of course Southern Europe has its challenges. Northern Europe we still see some growth, but there is a general carefulness throughout. As Philips, we have shifted our growth attention to, for example, ASEAN or Africa, Latin America, and we are able to find very good growth there.
Some of the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa, albeit off a low base in many people's eyes. But on the other hand, again, this is such a well-attended forum that we've got here. It means that people are coming to Africa, want to know about Africa, want to do business in Africa. If you sort of had to rank it as in terms of opportunities, market opportunities, where would Africa be compared to other countries?
I think Africa is for us in the top 5 of growth opportunities. Having said that, it is a long-term opportunity, but we have to start now. Philips has been in Africa for 100 years, but at the same time we are not satisfied with our presence in Africa. The Philips portfolio has shifted from historically more consumer electronics to much more healthcare and lighting. In healthcare it's very important that you have local presence so that you can work with the doctors and the nurses in order to bring solutions that really matter to improve people's lives.
And of course you have to work with governments when it comes to healthcare as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, governments for healthcare, but also for lighting, as most of our lighting business is actually a professional business. Think about street lights or lights for the villages or for buildings. And you know, I'd like to mention a bit that the economic development in Africa, maybe over the last few years, has been in the minerals and in the natural resources. But the economic development of the future will be much more on the demand side. And talking with governments about how to meet the demand for healthcare, or how to create energy efficient lighting so that the scarce resources can be managed in a careful manner. That's a matter of policy setting. And so you're right, here at WEF in Cape Town, we can team up with governments and NGOs and academia to discuss policies that create a sustainable long-term growth and is not a quick in and out kind of adventure.
Does it excite you, the demographics of Africa and the potential growing middle class, the middle class that will need the sort of products that Philips produces?
Yeah, tremendously. It excites me from a demand side and the business that we can do here. But let's not forget that Africa will surpass China with regard to a vibrant workforce at some point in time in the next 20, 30 years. I would hope that Africa as a continent can eradicate trade barriers, because that would really give a lot of power to the continent, where also local manufacturing makes much more sense. Because then the continent is big enough to have its own manufacturing and engineering base. So I see a roadmap for the continent where there will be more emphasis on bringing innovation that matters to people, healthcare, education, food, water, entrepreneurship. And as we do that, create an economy that is borderless, and therefore will have the scale and the efficiency that can compete with other regions in the world.
You're not suggesting perhaps that we should follow the Eurozone example and create an Afrozone and have a common currency called an Afro or something like that? I mean, we wouldn't go that far, surely. Maybe it would work.
I am actually advocating that trade barriers are taken down, because most African countries individually may not have the scale to and the supply chain to be able to compete with, for example, Southeast Asia or Taiwan, Korea and China. To create more scale, you need to take down the trade barriers. So that's not to say that you need political union. I'm not talking about that at all. But I'm talking about economic collaboration between countries, which will make it far more attractive for multinationals to bring investments into African countries and to achieve the scale and productivity to make that payback in the local continent.
I'm about to host a debate actually on that very subject, competitiveness, and one of the things that the panellists will be saying, I'm sure, having read the report, is that trade barriers should come down and there should be more cooperation between countries. Do you find that a barrier to you doing business? Does it affect the way Philips does business on the continent?
It does, and I do think that this has to be resolved. Likewise, also the logistic channels like roads and railways. Sometimes it's easier to ship a product from one country back to Europe and then back into another African country. And the same applies to the flow of people and the visa that are required for African talent to freely move. So I think in dealing with trade barriers, the movement of people and making it easier for goods to be transported between countries will all be greatly beneficial for economic development of this region.
When your research and development team come to you and say, right, we're going into this particular country in Africa, they have these specific needs, are you able to sort of align your production and your products for the specific needs of one particular region? I've sort of alluded to that question before the break, but does it present challenges for you? For example, something that someone will use in Eindhoven is not something that someone would use in Kigali, for example.
That's right, and we strongly believe that innovation needs to be meaningful and locally relevant. And if that means that we have to create different products and solutions, then, for example, for Europe, we will do that. We can do that in our global centers, but we are also quite prepared to set up local manufacturing in Africa. We do have a factory here in Lesotho. We have a factory in Egypt. I can imagine that over the next 10 years we will have more. And we partner with entrepreneurs in the region. For example, some of our kitchen appliances we do in the region with local partners.
Just for the African market, or do you export as well?
Just for the African markets, but it is foreseeable that, of course, export can also happen to other countries. But there is still a way to go.
Do you find that the governments of Africa are welcoming you with open arms and offering you incentives to set up manufacturing facilities and obviously employ people?
Not that many yet. I think this is an early area. We do see, of course, that NGOs team up with us. This is quite important to bring healthcare to rural areas, to train people. It's a big job to do. As Philips, we are committed to it. We are investing. We have increased our investments. We have doubled our workforce. But partnering with NGOs is really important because we cannot do it all on our own. And governments have increased interest in supporting industry and multinationals like us. Historically, a lot of that interest has been on infrastructure and minerals, but now we see it also shift towards areas like healthcare, lighting, and the well-being of people.
What are you hoping to get out of this forum, this World Economic Forum on Africa, you as the CEO of Philips?
I think partly WEF brings people together, and that means inspiration and good ideas. But for me it's very important that there is a very actionable agenda with concrete action that we can take next week, next month, next quarter and next year. And in that I see a market shift from the WEF of a couple of years ago versus the WEF now, where it's no longer about philanthropy, it is all about entrepreneurship and action. And the optimism about the economic vibrancy of this region is phenomenal. So I think there a lot of progress has been made, and that will bring wealth to many.
One of the themes of many of the interviews that I've conducted over the last couple of days has been on delivering on the promise, which is the theme of the WEF. Do you think we can do that? We've come so far, but there have been false starts for Africa in the past. Do you see something different? Do you sense a different atmosphere?
Well, I'm convinced that to deliver on the promise of Africa, it is about the people. And for the people, they are concerned about their health, their education, their children. They need light. So when we address these basic needs, and Philips' mission is to do that, we think that the potential and the power of all these people together will pull the economy forward. And so whereas maybe over the last years the economy has gotten a boost from the natural resources of Africa, the minerals, over the next years the economy will get a boost by improved productivity of people that live a healthier life and that have better education, and will engage through entrepreneurship to push the economy forward.
On a personal note, will you go back to Europe, and will you, when you meet other business leaders, I know you're very a prominent business leader there, and you meet with other people all the time, and also on a personal basis, will you say to friends, please come to Cape Town, Cape Town was fantastic, please come to Africa because it's the place to do business? Oh,
absolutely, and I will do that to other companies. But you mentioned Philips has 118,000 employees. As a leader, I also need to set the example and say, this is the time to bring our investments to Africa and to engage with locally relevant solutions.
Frans, we'll leave it there, but thanks very much for your
welcome.
time. That's Frans van Houten, who is the CEO of Philips, and that was Captains of Industry.